Yes. So students, today I'm going to start a visit to Cambridge. A visit to Cambridge is the story of how this famous journalist Firdaus Kanga, he has a meeting, he has an interaction with the famous scientist Stephen Hawking. You all know about Stephen Hawking, how he has been such a brilliant scientist who has presented us with so many theories. Okay, his most famous book is A Brief History of Time. It was a bestseller in its time, and it's still one of the best selling books in English language. Okay, and it has been translated into many a language. So a visit to Cambridge, here a tour is being described. Now previously England was only important to the author Firdaus Kanga because there was Cambridge in it, but now it had a greater appeal for him because he had met Stephen Hawking there, or he had arranged a meeting with Stephen Hawking when he was on a walking tour, and his guide was telling him that Stephen Hawking lives here. Then he arranged for a meeting with Stephen Hawking, and they found a common ground of interaction, maybe because of the fact that both of them, though of brilliant mind, where their life was that means somehow it was suppressed because of their physical condition, whereas Stephen Hawking developed a nerval disorder. Okay, I think I told you the name of his disease which he had. I forgot the name. Well, because of that he couldn't move about freely. Okay, he needed the help of a mechanized wheelchair and also a talking system. Okay, he couldn't talk in the proper manner. He used an electronic voice system. Motor neuron disease, correct. Good, Roshni, that you remember. So he developed motor neuron disease in his early 20s, and Firdaus Kanga was born with a physical problem, that is, he suffered from the disease brittle bones. That means brittle, we already know, something which breaks easily. So his bones were very that means they were not at all strong like other people's, but he had this problem. Okay, Trijit, I will remember. Okay, just at the end of the class I will again take it. So this happened that he suffered from brittle bones, and because of that his bones were prone to break easily. That's why he couldn't walk about freely, and he had to use the wheelchair. Now for him, meeting Stephen Hawking had a different dimension. All his life people had told him that even though you are in a wheelchair, you shouldn't lose your will, you should stay strong. But all those people were normal people who walked around in their fine strong legs. But for him, Stephen Hawking, meeting a person who suffered maybe in the similar manner as he did, maybe in a different manner, but he was also somebody who was bound to the wheelchair, right? That means because of his physical problems or some kind of disorder, he was not able to move about as freely as other people did. But both of them connected because of the brilliance of their mind. And to see somebody like Stephen Hawking filled up our author with a great source of energy, because it showed him that even because if you should not feel that you are disabled even though you have some physical disabilities. Okay, so this had a lasting effect on his mind, and as a result of this interaction, as a result of this chance meeting with Stephen Hawking, Firdaus Kanga now associated England with that famous meeting or the visit that he had to Cambridge, where he met Stephen Hawking. Now let us start the chapter. Cambridge was my metaphor for England, and it was strange that when I left it had become altogether something else, because I had met Stephen Hawking there. So tell me what a metaphor is. Those of you who attended previous day's class, I told you to study about it, right? I told you to study about all the different figures of speech, because I said I'm going to ask you questions on it. So tell me what a metaphor is. Metaphor is a type of figure of speech, yes. Where, here, it means importance. Yes, you can say that. Metaphor is a figure of speech in which an implied comparison is stated. Very good. Very good. A figure of speech in which an implied comparison is stated. Here, Firdaus Kanga probably means that for him, England, Cambridge was the metaphor for England, as if it stood for England in his mind. Okay. He just wants to say that for him, Cambridge was synonymous with England. Okay. Or that means the entire England for him was Cambridge, right? But metaphor actually means an implied comparison between two things. Implied comparison, that means a comparison which is not overtly stated, not directly stated, but it is something which is understood. Okay. So, for him, Cambridge was England. That means the heart and soul of England he found in Cambridge. But it was strange that when I left, it had become altogether something else, because I had met Stephen Hawking there. It was on a walking tour through Cambridge that the guide mentioned Stephen Hawking. You guys will let me know when the class time gets over. Okay, tell me 2 or 3 minutes before that. Poor man, who is quite disabled now, though he is a worthy successor to Isaac Newton, whose chair he has at the university. And I started because I had quite forgotten that this most brilliant and completely paralyzed astrophysicist, the author of A Brief History of Time, one of the biggest bestsellers ever, lived there. So, even though I knew that, that means I knew it. I had an idea that Stephen Hawking used to live there, but I had forgotten that he was, when I was visiting Cambridge, I had completely forgotten that this famous astrophysicist, that is Stephen Hawking, he lived there. Okay. He was completely paralyzed because of his motor neuron disease. Anyway, still he didn't lose the brilliance of his mind. When the walking tour was done, I rushed to a phone booth and, almost tearing the cord so it could reach me outside, phoned Stephen Hawking's house. That is, he went to the phone booth and he took the cord from the phone booth and he took it out very fast, so that he didn't have to get inside the phone booth and he could make the call from outside itself, because you remember that he also is in a wheelchair. And then I called Mr. Hawking's house. There was his assistant on the line, and I told him that I had come in a wheelchair from India. Perhaps he thought I had propelled myself all the way to write about my travels in Britain. I had to see Professor Hawkins. Even 10 minutes would do. Half an hour, he said, from 3:30 to 4. So, he said, that means he actually played the wheelchair story. He told him that I had come from India on a wheelchair and I had to meet him. Okay. So, because maybe he wanted to have a implication that it was really urgent for him to meet him, and the fact that he had come on a wheelchair emphasized his earnestness. Okay. Then he said that even if I get 10 minutes with him, I will be happy. But this man said, you will get half an hour, will get half an hour time with him from 3:30 to 4 in the afternoon. And suddenly I felt weak all over. Growing up disabled, you get fed up with people asking you to be brave. As if you have a courage account on which you are too lazy to draw a check. So when he was growing up in a disabled manner, that means people always thought that people who have this kind of physical disability, they need the mental encouragement all the time. Like, obviously people means well, your family means well, but sometimes it becomes very frustrating for the person who is actually suffering to be always courageous, because you know, it's not really the same thing for them. They can't attend normal schools, and even if they do attend the schools, there are kids who are always making fun of them. There's the teachers who are always putting them on a different bench. Okay, there's always the people outside the world who are always judging their actions, maybe giving them sympathetic looks, and they don't want to be treated that way. And the fact that everybody told him all the time that be courageous made him even more frustrated, as if he had a courage account, just like we have a bank account, as if he was born with a courage account, okay, from where he could take checks anytime he wanted. It's just a funny way of saying that courage is not stored in anybody's bank account like money is, right? You cannot always take courage from everything. It is not possible. It shows the frustration he felt. The only thing that makes you stronger is seeing somebody like you achieving something huge. Then you know how much is possible and you reach out further than you ever thought you could. So, it's like, and the only thing that makes you strong, the only thing that makes you feel good, makes you feel courageous, is when you are always you can look up to somebody who has the same kind of problem, same kind of disabilities as you have, same kind of physical problems as you have, and seeing them succeed in their life. That is something which makes you very, very strong. I haven't been brave, said his disembodied computer voice the next afternoon. I've had no choice. So he just admitted the fact that it's nothing brave of me, it's just that I didn't have any other choice. Surely, I wanted to say, living creatively with the reality of his disintegrating body was a choice. But I kept quiet because I felt guilty every time I spoke to him, forcing him to respond. There he was, tapping the little switch on his hand, trying to find the words on his computer with the only bit of movement left to him. His long, pale fingers. His fingers were moving very weakly, and that is the only way he communicated, by typing on the computer. And the computer would give out a voice. Okay. Every so often, his eyes would shut in frustrated exhaustion, and sitting opposite him, I could feel his anguish. The mind buoyant with thoughts that came out in frozen phrases and sentences stiff as corpses. Okay. No. Stephen Hawking was inventing time machine. I don't know about that. And I don't think there can be anybody who can invent time machine. It's just a fictitious, science fictitious thought, okay, which we amuse ourselves with, because won't it be brilliant to go back in time? Won't it be brilliant to go back in time or go forth in time? But life doesn't happen that way, okay? So this is something fictitious. Don't believe in that. Okay, so he was having a discussion with Stephen Hawking, and Stephen Hawking was typing back the words on the computer board. Okay, he was typing the things in the computer board, and Firdaus Kanga, the journalist, he was feeling really sad, okay, because he also felt a little bit guilty for making him talk, because talking for Stephen Hawking involved typing things on a computer, right? And those things to be spoken out in a humanized voice, like a robotic voice. Okay. Now this thing made Kanga feel really bad and really sad for him as well, because he could see very clearly that Stephen Hawking's brain, his mind was overflowing with thoughts. His mind was so much buoyant. You see, the meaning of buoyant has been given: extremely vibrant, full of energy, full of thoughts. His mind was as if overflowing with things. But because of his physical disability, because of the disease that he was born, that had captured him, he couldn't do it the way he wanted to. Okay. So that is the reason he was feeling so frustrated. He was feeling so very guilty for making Mr. Stephen Hawking talk. Okay. So that is something which was making him feel very bad. And sometimes you will see that Stephen Hawking would sigh in frustration. He could seem to be exhausted. You know, you have a company in the class. Dove has come in the classroom, and she is making some brilliant sound. Can you hear it? That is the sound the dove. He is or she is also want to be a part of your class. No. Medicine C, he was the brilliant scientist, okay, and everybody, he was like the treasure of everybody. So obviously they tried to do a lot of things there, but there wasn't much that he could do. His brain, nervous system, his neurons were fast, disintegrating. His motor neuron disease was taking away the movement from all parts of his body, and only at the time when the narrator, that is Firdaus Kanga, met him, only his fingers still had some motion left in them, because of which he was able to type, okay, because of which he was able to move his electronic wheelchair. Right. I'm not very much sure about the details of his medical endeavors, how people treated him, but I'm sure that there were different research hospitals who were working with his body to see if they could stop the disease from spreading further, but they were not successful. Anyway, he could feel the frustration in the man whose mind was overflowing with lots of different phrases, okay, lots of frozen phrases and sentences, okay. His mind was overflowing with thoughts, but they came out in frozen phrases. Why is it referred to as frozen phrases? Can you tell me? And sentences stiff as corpses. Tell me that. Why do you think it has been used? Frozen phrases and sentences stiff as corpses. Corpse, you already know. What is a corpse? What is a corpse? Can you tell me what a corpse is? I think you know what a corpse is, right? A dead body, yes. Correct, Chandranath. A dead body. So his sentences were as stiff as a dead body, and his words were frozen, because they were coming through the medium of a computer voice. He couldn't express it in his own voice. So the sentences which were coming out in a robotic voice of a voice operated system. Okay, that is, he was typing something and the voice was coming out from there. Not a voice operated system, but whatever things he was typing, the sound was coming because of some computerized voice, some kind of robotic pre-operated, something which has been pre-programmed into his computer. It was coming, so they did not contain any life, and those words which were coming out, they did not have the energy, or they did not reflect the vibrancy which Stephen Hawking so very well felt when he was trying to convey them. Okay, so that's why he didn't have any emotions, right? So there wasn't any emotions involved because it was a computerized voice, and there was no way in which Stephen Hawking could convey to the narrator how much he felt about these things, because there was no place in which he could show his feelings, because his voice was not there. Okay, so we are going to stop in this paragraph. I'm going to continue with the story tomorrow. Okay, students? Thank you, students, for today's class, and do read this part what we have done. Tomorrow I'll be asking you questions from this. Okay, bye, students.